Hello LSR7, let's take a look at what you can do with the Schoology Gradebook.
To begin talking Schoology Gradebook, we're going to actually start with an area called Grade Setup that can be found in the left menu of your Schoology course. Within Grade Setup, you can establish categories. Categories are important for your Schoology course because they help organize the materials you create in your course. When you create a category, you simply go up here to the Add button, you click on it, and you can name your category, and then decide whether you want to calculate that category by percentage or total points. I would recommend total points as they sync better to the PowerSchool gradebook if you plan on syncing grades. That's primarily for secondary teachers. Once you've done that, you can weight categories, but again, I would not focus too much on this because PowerSchool is the official gradebook of record in the LSR7 school district, so don't try and make your Schoology grades match your PowerSchool grades, and I'll show you more about that in just a bit. Once you've added some categories, there's some other things you can do here from Grade Setup, such as create rubrics. You can create gradebook scales and rubrics, and we'll talk about scales here in a moment, but the rubric area is pretty important because a lot of times when people import a rubric from their resources to a course, they wonder where it went. They don't know, and the answer is Grade Setup, Rubrics, and that's where you can find all the rubrics that are stored throughout your course. Not only can you find them here, you can come in here and you can edit them. Alright, let's talk gradebook scales for just a minute. Grade scales can be created right here on the Scales button, and a scale would be something like an MPE scale that you might use if you're on the elementary level. If you only want to show the letter grade to students, you can set that up in a scale to where it will only show whether students are mastering, progressing, or experiencing difficulty. That's a nice setup. Once you have all your settings set, such as categories, scales, rubrics, you can copy these settings to your other courses. Now, if you happen to have linked courses, your courses tied together, that's an action you would have had to take whenever you got your courses at the start of a new term. If you have that, then once you've set up categories and rubrics, those things are set up for all of your sections of your class. So if you're a high school teacher and you have the same prep for hours 1, 3, 5, and 7, then all of your setup is done by doing it once when your courses are linked. If your courses are not linked, that's when you use this Copy Settings button, and you can copy your categories, scales, and rubrics over to a different course. All right? The reason that I wouldn't worry too much about setting up your Schoology gradebook to match your PowerSchool gradebook is because of this. If you scroll down on the gradebook, the grade settings page, you have the ability to hide information from students. Again, PowerSchool is the official gradebook of record here, and this simply avoids the question, why do I have an 80% in Schoology but a 90% in PowerSchool, right? When kids see their grades don't match between the systems, so you can hide the overall grades from students. They'll still be able to see individual assignment grades, but they will not be able to see an overall grade in Schoology, and that avoids comparison. All right? You're going to learn some things later in this course here about using a default scale, and I should also mention before I leave Grade Setup that if you put a star next to any one of these categories, that becomes your default for any time you create a new material in Schoology. So let's say I created a new discussion, it's automatically going to populate with this assessment showing up as my default category, and then I can toggle to the other ones. But if I want one of these to be a default, I can set that right here in my grade setup. All right, moving forward a little bit here, let's talk about the actual gradebook. Now that we have grade setup set up, let's talk gradebook. All right, when you click into the Schoology gradebook here in the left menu, a view similar to this one shows up. All right, looking at these buttons along the top here, if you have linked courses, you can toggle to any of your hours gradebooks by clicking here. Your terms live here. Typically terms are not something you set up, but rather something that are assigned to your course. So since our courses are generated by PowerSchool, they come in with one of two terms really, actually one of three terms. For elementary teachers, generally your courses have a term of the full year, so from August to May, because they're generated by PowerSchool. Secondary teachers is a little bit different. If you're a middle school teacher and you teach elective classes, sometimes you'll have quarterly classes, like a first quarter, second quarter kind of setup. Or if you teach a class that maybe is a year-long class at the middle school level, unfortunately, you're going to get a new course each semester, And so your term will be by semester. All right, again, this is not something you can set up really, it's kind of something that you're given. Categories, these are the ones you created in Grade Setup. You can filter your gradebook view by category, kind of neat, or you can look at things that are ungraded. All right, and that's a setting you would set if you don't want to grade something. You can also filter by due dates or by date that the material was created. And you also have a view right here. This view allows you to see some things that are pretty unique to Schoology. Not only can you view any of these exceptions, is what these are called, you can mark things as excused or mark them as incomplete or mark them as missing, but if you have happened to have marked something as missing, but then the student turned it in or they submitted it, you can view only those items to let you know what you still have to grade. Materials you've previously graded that have a new submission, things that need grading still, things that have not been submitted, and then materials with a factor of 0. So just a variety of ways to filter your Schoology gradebook. If you click on an assignment name, you're given some options from within the gradebook here. You are able to, by clicking on the name, you can travel straight to that material within your Schoology course, which is nice. These are hyperlinked to the material itself, so you can grade student work. But you can click on these dots right here, and you can edit the item. You can go and track revisions, so checking and seeing maybe a student submitted 2 or 3 different revisions of an assignment. You can look and see when each of those came in and what each of those is. You can kind of mass fill things here, so mark all empty cells excused, incomplete, or missing. Again, those are the exceptions that you can mark. And you can view statistics about an assignment as well from that menu. Statistics look like this, all right? They give you some mathematical data on that assignment and how your class performed on it. The plus button allows you to create new materials right here from within the Schoology gradebook. So you don't actually have to be in your course to do this within a folder. You can do it from the gradebook here if that's easier or makes more sense to you. All right? The thing I'll point out here is you can create a grade column for something that is not a Schoology material. So if I want to grade something that is either another digital product or it's something that my kids have done paper pencil, but I want to keep track of it in the Schoology gradebook, I can do that by creating a gradebook column. All right? Over here, the 3 dots. This is an area of Schoology that is pretty critical right here. And when you click on the 3 dots, you have the ability to visit what's called bulk edit. All right? I'm going to come right back to bulk edit because these 3 things really I'm not going to talk a whole lot about. There's an option to print some reports. It's a lot more limited than you find in PowerSchool. You can export your grades to get an Excel spreadsheet of data of what these grades reflect, and then you can also import grades to and from here. These would be features that are necessary if you decide to link classes after you have already had students do work and have recorded grades in Schoology. That's when you'd use those features. The bulk editor, back to this. This is important. When you click into bulk edit, it brings up a screen like this where you can make a bunch of changes to a bunch of materials all at once. All right, the things that show up here are assignments, discussions, assessments, test quizzes, and you can learn a whole lot about your assignments from here as well as change a whole lot about your assignments. You can edit the name, the category, the maximum number of points, the factor. Again, I wouldn't mess a whole lot with factor, but you can edit the factor from here. You can edit rubrics from here. You can choose whether or not students see rubrics from here if there's a rubric attached to something. You can go and give due dates to materials, and then you can also toggle things that maybe have a grade period or do not have a grade period. If you want things to show in your Schoology gradebook, generally they need a period assigned to them as well as a category. All right, and they also have to be published. Okay, and so that's something you can also change from here in the bulk editor. Bulk editor is big. One of the neat features that's offered in bulk edit is this shift due dates. All right, so let's say there's a year where we have a bunch of snow days. All right, you can shift the due dates by one of each of your due dates here all at once. So you don't have to use the calendar to drag things. You don't have to click into each cell individually to affect the due date. If you want to move the due date of everything by one, you click the button. Back by one, you click the button. It's pretty slick. I love Bulk Editor. I love the Schoology Gradebook. I love Schoology. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been All Things Gradebook. The end.